We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
I want to open up a salad-only food cart.
Okay.
In Nova Scotia.
In Nova Scotia.
And we're only going to sell, like, only healthy stuff. Like, farm fresh, like...
Okay.
Produce.
Sure.
And I'm going to call it Artichoke Island.
Wow. Artichoke Island. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Man, you have all of these jokes. You know, do you know about have we talked at all about the island that's full of snakes? This is a legit thing. This isn't a joke.
I know about this island full of snakes, yes.
Yeah, it's terrifying for me that, you know, there's just these snakes all over. I think it's somewhere in the East
I have
sea.
No idea.
I don't know. Anyway,
the East Sea.
In the East Sea. The one over there.
Yeah.
No,
oh, God.
No, but, well, did you know that there's a similar island, except it's full of frogs?
What?
Yeah, off the coast of Canada. There's an island that's full of frogs. Yeah, they call it Croak Island.
Whoa!
Oh,
that's really good.
Man, it's good to be back.
It's good to be back, hitting you left and right with all the puns. We know you love it, and that's what you're here for.
Yeah, you know, Oak Island, man, it's funny. It's not really funny exactly, mm-hmm. but there's just this. When we watch the legends build, and we're going to start to see it here, mm-hmm. there are just so many people who have been there digging on that island and found nothing. And yet, for some reason, they're all still convinced. And like, legions of people are like convinced that there's treasure there.
Yeah, it's not funny haha.
Right.
It's irony funny. I wouldn't call it Joke Island.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, Joke Island, our comedy club. Forthcoming.
Yeah. Yep, we're going to open up really soon in Canada. I think it's interesting because if you're looking at it from like let's say that you're walking into a casino, right? Mm-hmm. And you never hit, but you keep going for decades. You'd say that person's nuts.
Right.
But very different circumstances. Hard to compare them, but it's kind of the same thing. You're not really hitting a whole lot there.
And it's not even that you're not hitting. It's like there is a slot machine in the casino, and you see someone sit down in front of it, and they play it for an hour.
Yeah.
Never comes up with a win. Mm-hmm. Someone else sits down, plays it for an hour, never comes up with a win. This happens for like a week. Mm-hmm. It never pays out. And people still keep going to that slot machine because they're like, it's definitely worth playing.
There's a legend about this slot machine.
It's kind of funny because in that analogy, it's very similar to Oak Island, wherein I think you see people playing that slot machine and you say, wow, if there are so many people there playing it, there must be a reason that they keep going. Mm-hmm. And then the island, or in this case, the slot machine, becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. More and more people show up and they dig, and you say, oh my God, well, if so many people are digging there, then there has to be something there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you might as well call it Broke Island. Okay, anyway, This is We Are Slaying Monsters. We got Matt across the table.
Yo!
And I'm EJ. And our cats are wrestling. And now they've decided to go to... Oh, no, they're back up here wrestling. Okay.
Whoa.
All right, so we're going to start this episode off. This is episode part 2 of Oak Island.
Part 2 of the mystery of Oak Island. So when we last left Oak Island, 3 boys, Daniel McGinnis, Anthony Vaughn Jr., and John Smith, they're sure that they have found the site of buried treasure. They think it's pirate treasure. They've dug a hole in a depression underneath an oak tree on the barely inhabited province of Oak Island. Now, in this hole, they found a layer of flagstone and 3 different layers of tightly packed oak limbs, which appear to be platforms supporting the integrity of their tunnel. John Smith, the oldest, was so sure that there was something down there that he purchased the plot of land on which they'd been digging. He started farming the land to make ends meet, and he liked it so much there that he actually bought a few more plots, too, on the island. And not long after, Daniel McGinnis bought his own plot of land on the southwest corner of the island and started his own farm. So the boys are slowly, moving there as they come of age. The guys stayed close friends, and they spent their leisure time just kind of roaming around Oak Island and looking for treasure.
That sounds like the perfect life.
It's pretty great, right?
I know. As a bit of a loner, I'm like, oh my God. I wish it was back in the day where you could, buy a piece of land for, I don't know how long ago was this?
This is the 1790s.
Oh, this was a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. And now we're talking colonialism issues here, but...
Sure, yeah.
Things were cheap as shit.
Well, and Oak Island is an interesting place. We'll talk about this in just a minute, but land on Oak Island was very, very, very cheap. In fact, you could say nearly free.
Oh.
But they're searching through the island because in their minds, right, this is the site of Captain Kidd's buried treasure. We knew that he had buried some on Gardner's Island, just, in the vicinity, right, off Long Island. Mm-hmm. And that was proven. The treasure had been found. It had been dug up. And there's always been these rumors of well, maybe there was more. Maybe they were buried somewhere else. Maybe the Thimble Islands. Maybe something like this. Maybe Oak Island. That's what's in their mind. And so they think that if they can find proof that Captain Kidd had been on Oak Island, they might be able to prove that he buried his treasure there, or at least part of his treasure there. Their suspicions were at least partially supported by the local lore. See, mainlanders on Nova Scotia sometimes told stories of seeing lights out on Oak Island, and it had long been considered a refuge for pirates, which is probably one of the reasons that it stayed so uninhabited.
When did Samuel Ball come in, though?
Oh, we're gonna talk about that right now.
Oh, okay.
Because the story goes that it was uninhabited, right? Mm-hmm. Conventional narrative makes it seem like Oak Island was empty wilderness before McGinnis's fishing trip, where he found the depression and the original site of the money pit. Mm-hmm. But that's far from the truth. Mm-hmm. See, back in the 1760s, Oak Island had been subdivided into 32 different plots, each 4 acres large. This was all under an act called the Shoreham Grant, an initiative which offered free land to anyone in an effort to increase the population of coastal Nova Scotia and the islands. Now, by the 1790s, 4 farmers owned property on the island. It's unclear if all of them actually lived there or if they were just working the land there, but 4 people owned plots there. Among these farmers, and I did some digging into these records, so among these farmers we have a John Smith, with the Smith spelled with an E, S-M-I-T-H-E, and a Donald McGinnis. So we have McGinnis's first name is wrong because in our records it seems to be Daniel McGinnis, not Donald McGinnis. But it's likely that those are the same people that we're talking about here. John Smith, Daniel McGinnis.
Yeah.
There's also a Neil McMiller, who kind of seems to be lost to history. I couldn't find anything about Neil McMiller. And finally, there's Samuel Ball, who's one of the most fascinating characters in this early narrative. Samuel Ball, they talked about him a lot on the TV series Oak Island. They kind of make you believe that maybe he discovered the treasure himself.
And just kept it?
Right.
Yeah.
Samuel Ball was born into slavery in 1765 in South Carolina. Ball wasn't his real name. We don't know what that was. That's been lost to history, unfortunately. His family worked on the Ball plantation, and during his early life, it kind of seemed like he was destined for the same fate. At least until April 19th, 1775, when, do you know what happened on that day? Let's try your general American history here.
Oh, God. That was when they started to recruit soldiers for the revolution.
Kind of, sort of. That is when the first muskets were fired at Lexington and Concord and signaled the start of the American Revolution.
Okay, I was close.
Yeah. By November, after suffering some pretty severe casualties at the Battle of Bunker Hill, the British realized that they might actually have to start taking the American army seriously. And so the governor of Virginia, who was British, issued a proclamation, and he said that any enslaved citizen who enlisted in the British military would be given their freedom. Within a year, this offer was extended to all enslaved men in the colonies. Now under the name of his plantation owner, Samuel Ball enlisted in 1779 or 1780. Again, it's unclear if he chose to enlist or was forced to enlist by the plantation owner or maybe the governor or both. We don't really know. Some narratives have him escaping at the age of 11 and joining up, but I can't confirm any of that with the actual reported history. We just know that at some point by 1780, he was enlisted with the British military. We do know that Ball was in New York during the winter of 1780 and served under General Henry Clinton. Whether he fought or not is unclear. He may have simply been a worker at the camp, like a cook or something like that. Either way, he was ultimately sent to New Jersey, and that's where he was when the war ended in 1784. There are reports that Ball stayed on and served with Lord Cornwallis after the Revolution, but no matter what, he was given his freedom. By 1791, he had made his way to Oak Island, and he purchased or was granted Lot 32 on the far east shore. That's essentially the elephant's chest. Remember, if you think of it as the elephant.
Yeah.
From here, he got married, he farmed cabbage, and according to local legend, he was the richest man on the island. Which, of course, means that he was the richest of like 4 guys. Right?
Yeah. But it's funny because the show made it seem like he had all this money.
Yeah. The thing is, it seems like you could kind of take that as he's like the smoking gun of Oak Island, right?
Yeah.
And part of it is like, well, yeah, I mean, how did he possibly buy land there? And buy these plots of land, he's going to buy more as he goes too. He lived there before Daniel McGinnis discovered the money pit, right? Because he moved there in 1791. McGinnis discovered the money pit in 1795. He could have unearthed the treasure himself if it was there. But how rich was he really? When Ball died in 1864, his executor was Anthony Vaughan. And apparently they'd become friends and they had been farming the island together. Ball's will said this: I give my wife Catherine the furniture, wearing apparel, and all real and personal estate during her life. First situated and lying between lands owned by John Berghouse and Daniel McGinnis, containing about 100 acres, also an area called Hook Island, all my farm at Oak Island. It's a lot of land for a freed slave turned cabbage farmer. Mm-hmm. This led some people to believe that Ball found the treasure, whatever it was, and used it to buy his property and expand his farmland. Essentially, he became like a real estate baron there.
Well, I don't know how much any of it went for. Like, I don't know how much any of these acres went for.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Ball's land purchases fell under the Shoreham Grant from 1759. This grant essentially said that any unoccupied land could be acquired by anyone if they were willing to pay the taxes on it and agreed to farm it.
Okay.
That's a great deal, no matter how you cut it. And
that's great.
It's an even better deal for somebody who's looking to start a cabbage farming business. Ball landed in Nova Scotia and founded his business with basically zero startup cost. He wasn't rich when he came there. He was just really fucking smart.
Yeah. And a good cabbage farmer, apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
He had a business there, too.
I don't think Ball found any treasure at Oak Island, if there was any buried there to begin with. I believe Ball was just an enterprising farmer who knew a good deal when he saw it. If you look at the truth surrounding Ball's life, that he essentially acquired this land for free and only had to pay the taxes on it and farmed it to make his fortune, you can understand part of what's going on at Oak Island. See, Nova Scotia was pushing that land. They were trying to get people to buy up the plots. They wanted taxpayers.
Oh, they wanted to... Oh, I see. They wanted tax money.
Because they have empty land otherwise. And this is just land that's not paying anything. They want to put people on it. They want farmers on it so the farmers can pay the taxes. And they want to make that money. Stories of buried treasure, that's a great way to drive people to invest in your land.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Get a bunch of poor suckers to jump over there and start digging.
So already the legend of buried treasure is really good for business.
In fact, there's buried treasure all over Canada.
Yeah, there's buried treasure in our house right now. You want to buy the house and search for it? Yeah.
Exactly. What a great narrative. I mean, that's quite a conspiracy theory, though. Do you really think the Canadian government... do you think they just used it as a
No. So to be completely clear, because I understand that it looks like that, I don't think that the Canadian government uses Oak Island as a get rich quick scheme to sell off land. We're going to talk about this later on, because basically what happens is a bunch of people end up with property on Oak Island, and it is advantageous for those personal landowners to keep a treasure narrative going, particularly when you have people coming in who are interested in, say, renting your land.
I guess also if you want to get off that island, you could sell your land for a really nice price.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the Amityville house.
Yes.
And how you have there's all these houses around the Amityville house they're selling for $350,000, $400,000, and then plopped right in the center is Amityville, and Amityville selling for $2 million.
Yeah.
You know. Now, while you have Ball harvesting his cabbage, Daniel McGinnis, Anthony Vaughn, John Smith, they haven't forgotten about their buried treasure either. They're exhausting the digging that they can do by hand in the money pit, and having kind of hit a wall, essentially, like there's only so far you can go with shovels and shit. They continued to investigate the rest of the island, looking for signs that somebody might have been there. Remember, they're always looking for Captain Kidd.
Yeah.
Their searches actually proved fruitful. Over the next decade or so, these amateur archaeologists found a copper coin from 1713
Ooh.
and a bosun's whistle.
Ooh.
You know what a bosun is, right?
I know what it is. I pronounce it boatswain because I'm silly, but it's bosun.
It's one of those silly British words.
I know.
Is not pronounced at all Lancashire or something
Leicester.
like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Worcester.
Bosun.
Okay. Bosun. Yes, so that's not crazy to think that there was a bosun's whistle.
Not at all, right?
Not at all crazy.
Yeah.
Not crazy that there's a 1713 coin.
Mm-hmm.
Although, damn, that's cool.
Although, it's still, this wasn't really an island known for shipping. There's not a dock there. There's not a port.
No, but it's not crazy to think that people stopped off there. People stop off on all kinds of random islands, even today, just to, fish or hang out.
While searching the cove, or the elephant's forehead, they found an iron ring bolt, which was embedded in a rock. And this was a really fascinating discovery, because that kind of indicates that somebody was tying something up in the cove.
Regularly enough
To install a ring bolt. Yeah, not try to rely on hooking something around a tree or something like that. Yeah. If that's a ship or a longboat, that might confirm their suspicions of pirate activity on the island. Maybe even Captain Kidd himself.
Too bad he didn't carve his initials on that little ring.
Yeah, CK.
Yeah, Captain Kidd's ring bolt. Nobody else can use it.
7 years after the discovery of the money pit, Anthony Vaughn was in business in Chester, a small town on the northern shore of the bay. Apparently, Vaughn had been talking about their search quite a bit, which always seems kind of strange to me. You would think if you thought you had found the site of buried treasure, you wouldn't just go blabbing about it to anyone who can listen. But maybe he was drunk. Maybe he was having a conversation with people he knew or something like that. But either way, he was talking about, we think that there's some buried treasure on this island. And Vaughn connected with a man who would change the course of the Oak Island treasure hunt forever. Simeon Linz came from Onslow, a town on the Bay of Fundy.
I love Fundy.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bay of Fundy is badass.
That's where the tide comes in really fast and
Yeah,
people
it
get
has like
swept
the
away.
bath effect or the bathtub effect.
Yes.
Because it's such a narrow inlet and all this water comes in and they blow a horn and you have to get back onto shore or you're going to get swept away.
Yeah.
I want to go so bad. Okay, continue.
So Linz was 29 at the time. He was well connected and probably at least a little bit wealthy. And, maybe he was a little bit gullible too, or at least a little bit excitable. Because when he heard this story, the money pit, possible treasure there, he knew he had to get in on the action. So Linz and Vaughn hit it off and they kept in touch over the course of the next few months. During his time back in Onslow, Linz can't get the money pit out of his mind. He hasn't even been there, but the intrigue was just too damn tempting for him. So he started reaching out to his business contacts, asking for money. Maybe, can you send some drilling equipment? Do you know any laborers who might be interested in a project? And within a year, Linz had founded the Onslow Company, along with Daniel McGinnis, Anthony Vaughn, and John Smith. The mission of that company was to get to the bottom of the Oak Island mystery. Literally.
Ooh.
1804 saw a new excavation of the money pit. This one well-funded and well-staffed. Which is good, because the odds are really stacked against them at this point. So we're talking 8 years have gone by since the boys first started digging. The hole they had made has partially collapsed at this point, and it had to be recreated. Now, for the first time, experienced diggers were on site excavating this area, making sure the tunnel walls were going to be safe and secure so there wouldn't be any more cave-ins.
I would imagine that there'd be like a ton of water table, like you hit the water table a bunch of times and
30 feet down.
I mean,
Yep.
it's an island. Like there's got to be water coming in, right?
Oh, there's water coming in.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in just a sec. Yep. They hit the water line at 30 feet.
Which is
And
they'd been lower than that, right?
no, that's where the boys stopped, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right around 30 feet. That was about as far as they could get because
Right.
then the water started coming in. They found a layer of charcoal at about the 30-foot mark before unearthing another platform of spruce logs. This got everybody excited because this meant that the Oak Island guys had been telling the truth. There had to be something down there. This is now the third wood platform that they found. And every 10 feet, more of these wood platforms are appearing. They dig down to 60 feet and they find these strange brown fibers, almost like a coarse hair.
I don't know what this could be.
Well, they had no idea what it was, apparently. It's no surprise that they were unable to identify it because they'd probably never seen coconuts before.
What the fuck?
Yeah. They found a layer consisting of fibrous coconut husks nearly 60 feet underground.
Okay, that makes no sense.
In Canada.
Yeah, that makes
In Canada. Yeah. We're talking 800 miles from the tropics.
I mean, you could pretty much explain away everything up to that point.
Right.
And we've already talked about the oak platforms and the charcoal.
Sure.
That can be explained, I think. But the fucking coconut?
Yep.
What is that? Why is that there?
Let's set those strange coconuts to the side, just like the Onslow Company did. Yeah. And we will continue digging into our story. 90 feet. 90 feet below ground. Platforms every 10 feet. So consistent that it's almost a joke at this point. They're ready to start their act at Joke Island, the comedy club. Don't you hate it when you dig down 10 feet and you find a platform made of spruce logs?
Has this ever happened to you?
As they unearthed the 9th platform, they made a different discovery. One which would define the legends of Oak Island for 2 centuries. Resting on the 9th platform, caked with dirt and debris, the workers found a stone slab. It was 2 feet long, 15 inches wide, and 10 inches thick, and it weighed 175 pounds. But far more fascinating than the massive size of the stone was the runic inscription carved on it.
Shut up.
90 feet down, they found a gigantic stone covered in runes.
Shut up.
A series of indecipherable characters, triangles, squares, arrows, all that kind of stuff, spread across the stone. Completely indecipherable 2-line message. So you can picture this, right? Like you find this stone, the workers all get quiet and they study this carving. They're trying to make sense. What the hell is this thing? Who left it here? Why at this depth, 90 feet underground? What does all this mean? And unfortunately, none of them, I mean, they're not code breakers, you know?
Yeah.
So they have this message, 2-line message. They have no idea what it means. They don't know what to do with any of it. So it took them most of the day to haul the heavy stone out of the money pit. And as night approached, they kept working, digging 3 more feet before hitting something solid. By now, night had fallen, and they all agreed, okay, we're going to pack it in for tonight. We'll resume the following morning. We'll unearth whatever this solid thing is 3 feet down. Each man went to bed that night with the same thought. Solid object, 94 feet down, has to be what we're searching for. Finally, all these years, we found a chest, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah, probably.
The next morning, they arrived at the money pit at daybreak. But to their horror, they found the shaft full of water up to the 30-foot mark, up to the water line. There had been no rain the night before. For all of the weeks they've dug up until this point, the soil had been dry and free from groundwater. But somehow, overnight, 60 feet of water had seeped into the hole.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
Oh no, they are so screwed.
So they start bailing, passing buckets from hand to hand as everybody joins in. But despite their best efforts, the water level never seemed to diminish. And so a slow dread starts to fall over them as they realize something is causing that water to flow into the money pit from somewhere else. It tastes salty, not like fresh groundwater, but like the ocean around the island. And they were defeated. The Onslow Company temporarily abandoned the project, left it for the winter. But Simeon Linz, this well-to-do fundraiser, he still can't get the money pit out of his head. The next season, he's back on Oak Island and he's got a new plan. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to dig a second hole 14 feet away and then connect it to the money pit through a tunnel. And that way we will get around the water seepage that's coming in.
Maybe the water will go into the other tunnel.
Possibly.
That would be the thing, to like build sort of like a bathtub, like a vertical bathtub that the water can instead go into.
That would have been a smart idea.
Okay.
You know, the people who end up on Oak Island are from all walks of life and have all manner of experience when it comes to engineering.
Listen, I'm not an engineer. If there's any engineers listening, like let us know what you would do.
Yeah, would this work?
Yeah, I feel like my idea is dumb. I mean, it's not like it's. I feel like it's smart for a dumb person. I'll tell you that.
Wouldn't the water just keep coming in?
Not well, but what if the water's coming from one direction, like the west?
Yeah.
But you're building the other tunnel from the east.
Okay.
Oh, but then you'd need to connect them.
Right.
You'd need to give that water somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Like, I would try to figure out where I can send that water somehow, but you don't have that ability back then. I think now you can. Now
right.
you can connect them, put an angle, like make an angle of it and send it into another tub. I mean, I don't know. This is my expert advice.
Their idea here was to get down below the 94-foot mark, then drill, or not drill, but excavate horizontally, and then go up.
Oh, wow.
And come in from underneath. That was their idea.
Basically build a huge pit.
Yeah.
Like a 14-foot pit that goes down 94 feet.
No, they dug to a depth of 114 feet.
Yeah.
21 foot deeper than the original money pit. And they didn't find any water during that dig. So they began tunneling 12 feet horizontally toward the original dig, with the idea being that they would get underneath the dig and then go back up and break out the bottom of the chamber.
Okay. That doesn't make sense to me because the water would fall on them.
Well, 12 feet into their dig, water started seeping through the walls.
Okay.
And they tried to go farther, but eventually the earth between the money pit and their tunnel caved in.
Jesus.
And water poured into their new tunnel and their new pit. Which, I mean, there were people inside when that happened.
Yeah.
And so everybody panicked and raced back to the ladders and scrambled to safety. Hours later, that second shaft was flooded too, also with 60 feet of water.
Oh, wow.
Again, they tried to bail it out, and again, they failed to stop the flow. Finally defeated, Linz had to face a very harsh truth. The money pit was lost for good.
Oh, all the money that he sunk into it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the double meaning of the money pit,
really,
right?
Yeah.
Depending on how you look at it, to the boys, the Oak Island boys, the money pit is like, oh, there's money down there. Now, Simeon Linz is the first person who's realizing that the money pit might just be a pit that you throw money into and don't get it back.
Yeah.
And the money pit was lost for about 40 years. John Smith filled in the 2 holes and turned his attention to farming. But even as he got older, raised his family, he and the other Oak Island boys, they couldn't shake the discovery of their youth. Over the next 40 years, they studied the markings on the stone that they'd found. John Smith even had it fashioned into his fireplace. So he has this gigantic stone as part of his fireplace inside his house. Yeah. But despite his best efforts and his companions, they couldn't make heads or tails of the runes carved into it. So it's just left as a mystery. 40 years later, 1849, a new face appears on Oak Island. This is a man named Jotham Blanchard McCulley.
Jotham?
Jotham.
That's a cool name.
I know, right? And he is a drilling engineer. See, in the intervening 4 decades, technology has advanced quite a bit. From shovels and buckets that they were using. And now there's a new technology that's going to be implemented here. In the early 1800s, there was a shipwright in New York named Ezra Lehomadieu who devised...
Good job.
Thank you.
So, it's a little much, but...
my French is either 0 or 100. There's nothing in between.
110,000%, yeah.
So he devised a new way to create holes in wood called the double-potted center screw auger. This invention was essentially an early version of a drill bit, still in use by power drills. It was a vast improvement over the current technology, which was the trundle. Do you know what trundle is?
No.
It's essentially just a smooth spike. So if you had to make a hole up until the early 1800s, you put a spike against the wood and you hammered it in, and that's how you made the hole.
Or you could just shoot.
Sure. That was in the Savo Man-Eaters episode. They had to make holes in the steel beams, and so he fired his gun at the beams to make holes in it.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah. But no, now they are using this new technology. It's revolutionized shipbuilding and carpentry. Soon, every shop has multiple sizes of this auger hanging on their wall, and it looks like a drill bit. You know, you've seen them. It's a T-shape. It's got a drill bit, and then it has a wooden handle to it, and you would drill with a twisting action.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Le Homadieu manufactured 33 different sizes of the auger himself, and other companies started using this invention in other ways. So these twist augers started to be employed by farmers to dig post holes and drill for water. And suddenly this became a whole lot easier on the laborers.
Okay, this was before the dowsing rod was invented. Yeah. Because that would have made things so much easier.
Oh, God. I'm sure they were still using dowsing rods to, quote, find water.
Oh, yeah.
Please don't take our listeners down that path.
Sorry.
Dowsing rods don't work. They don't work. If you need an explanation as to how dowsing rods don't work, check out episode 1 of our Aztec saucer crash, where we'll get really deep into why dowsing rods are complete bullshit.
Yeah, if you're a dowsing rod fan, we're going to ruin your day with that episode.
I'm sorry. So this new drilling device caught the eye of Nova Scotia engineer Jotham McCulley. There are rumors that he was present at the original Onslow dig in Oak Island in 1805. But I found his gravesite in Truro, Nova Scotia, and it claims that he was born in 1818, which means that he likely heard about the Oak Island money pit secondhand. We'll find there are a lot of date mismatches when you take the traditional Oak Island narrative and then the actual history. Either way, it intrigued McCulley. And being familiar with drilling technology, he was very eager to employ one of these earth augers in a new excavation of the money pit. So he joined forces with the aging John Smith, Anthony Vaughan, and Simeon Linz, and they formed a group called the Truro Company. Daniel McGinnis had died at some point in the intervening years, and the other boys were in their 70s, which was too old to be involved beyond, like, pointing out the location of the site and saying, like, dig here.
And 70 back then is like 150 now.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, this is 1840s. 70 is very old.
Yeah.
So after re-excavating what they could by hand, McCulley brought in his powered auger. Using this, they drilled 5 holes down to a depth of 110 feet, 12 feet deeper than the previous excavation. And now, strap in, because I'm about to throw a whole bunch of numbers at you, and then we'll simplify it. But at 98 feet deep, the auger hit a solid wood object, which was identified as the last spruce platform from the previous dig. Then they pressed on, drilling through another foot of soil before hitting 4 inches of oak, now just over 99 feet deep. Here, the auger drilled through 5 inches of metal before hitting 8 more inches of oak, then 22 inches of metal, followed again by 4 inches of oak and 6 inches of spruce, and then everything below was clay.
Okay.
Continued drillings revealed whatever the oak and metal objects were, they were smaller than the spruce platforms, likely situated one on top of the other. So it's pretty clear where everyone's head went at that point, but I'm going to detail it out because this gets really, really fucking confusing. Okay. I was even... There are diagrams in Darcy O'Connor's book, and thank God, because when you just have these block paragraphs of like this and this and this and this, I'm like, oh, I can't
What is this?
What is this?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Truro Company believed that 110 feet down in the money pit, they struck 2 oak chests stacked on top of each other containing metal objects. Each chest was 4 inches thick. The top one was 13 inches high, and the lower one was larger, about 30 inches high. 2 chests stacked one on top of each other, 110 feet deep. Even more exciting was the metal sample that was returned to them on the auger bit. Because, you think about it, you're drilling down, and then you have to kind of unscrew it as you go up, and there's little bits of like dirt and debris. That's how they know what they're hitting.
Okay, yeah.
The metal that they found from the first chest brought up, according to McCulley, 3 small links. He described them as an ancient watch chain.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah. Whatever this small chain was, it was made of gold.
Whoa.
Over 100 feet down, there's gold inside some oak.
Huh.
Imagine the excitement that they had when this came to light. There's this gold chain, probably in an old oak box or chest. This is buried treasure.
Yeah, what more do you need, man?
This is what they're searching for.
Yep.
A critical point of all this drilling was that the oak containers surrounding the metal, so the chests, essentially, they were not as wide as the money pit tunnel. So, at least the way the treasure hunters are seeing it, there's a chest or box type structure inside that's smaller than the shaft, which gives even more credence to the idea of a buried chest. If somebody intended to recover their fortune, they're not just going to dig a hole and throw some shit in it. They would put a chest down there. Makes perfect sense. The Truro Company set to digging a new shaft about 10 feet from the money pit. The intention here was, again, dig down to the depth of the oak and metal objects and then tunnel horizontally in hopes to avoid the flooding.
Okay.
They made it 109 feet down and started their horizontal tunnel. But again, as they neared their prize, water started flooding in this new shaft, forcing everyone to leave and surrender. And so it became very clear, this strategy that they have, it's never going to work until they can determine where the water is coming from and prevent this flooding.
Yeah, the only way they can pull anything up out of there is through some kind of an auger that, I guess, that maintains the integrity of the money pit so that the water doesn't seep all in. The soil around it can absorb that water and it can kind of just stay away. Exactly.
And, the auger they're using is maybe, 2 or 3 inches around.
So
like it's not enough for somebody to get down there.
Right.
And they don't have access to a man-sized auger at this point.
Right. The aliens haven't given them that technology yet.
Oh, do not.
How do you explain it? How do we go from old augers to new augers, Matt?
We can only tackle one batch of crazy at a time. We got to start with Oak Island. We can't just jump to ancient aliens. It's no good. They start to search the island because to them, there's some way that this water is just flooding in. And during this inspection, they made a remarkable discovery. The beach at Smith's Cove, the trunk and the forehead of the elephant, that was man-made, or at least man-altered. Underneath the sandy beach, they found a layer of coconut fiber, evenly spread. And then underneath that was a layer of eelgrass, or zostera. It's a common seagrass.
Is it common to that area?
Yes.
Okay.
And then underneath that was a layer of stones, mostly beach rocks, laid out in a cobblestone pattern.
Oh.
So seagrass wasn't growing. The seagrass had been laid there.
Oh, okay.
So what was the purpose of this artificial beach?
Probably so that they could haul things in and out of that area.
But why the seagrass and the coconut fiber?
Oh, I mean, I have no idea why they would do that.
Well, the Truro Company immediately decided that this was created to facilitate the flood tunnels they'd encountered. See, to them, this was a way that the ocean water was getting into the money pit. There was some kind of underground aqueducts, 500 feet long, that were designed as a trap that would pour water into the money pit.
Okay.
And the coconut fiber and the seagrass were a filter that kept the tunnels from clogging.
Oh.
Because if you just had flood tunnels that were leading in here, you would have sand,
everything would
you would
go
have
in.
dirt, debris, maybe even fish, that would be swimming into this, and ultimately it would get clogged.
Okay.
But if you use seagrass and coconut fiber and these stones as a filter, then only the water is going to get in.
Yeah, sure.
And now, this excited them even more. So not only have they found evidence of a dig site, which seems to have some chests buried at a depth of over 100 feet, they've also found evidence that whoever buried them has been covetous enough to booby trap this by building flood tunnels in the area. So this has got to be worth a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there was some other reason for an artificial beach that utilized cobblestones, seagrass, and coconut fiber.
I feel like there is a more logical explanation for this, but I cannot think of it.
I wouldn't expect you to. This was not something that I would have come up with on my own. The answer to this riddle of sorts may lie in the occupation of Oak Island's residents. Some were farmers, some were loggers. But remember that John Smith came from a family of fishmongers. Now, we're talking about a time when refrigeration wasn't common. One of the best ways to preserve fish and any meat would be...
Like in an underground, probably? Like where it's cold? Salty? In salt?
Salting it.
Oh, okay.
Salting it, exactly.
All right, we're going to go that way. Okay, all right.
So, Dennis J. King, who is a researcher and honestly a very outspoken detractor of the Oak Island myth, postulates a theory about the beach. He believes that the beach in perhaps a natural salt spring was used as an early salt works on Oak Island. So what would happen is the seawater or the salt spring would permeate through the sand where it would be trapped on the rocks, the cobblestones. It would then be filtered through the coconut fiber and the eelgrass, which removed the dirt and impurities, and the sun evaporated the water, leaving pure salt behind.
Is this like a method that...
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, this is an established method of creating salt from seawater.
That makes more sense than the other thing.
And then that salt could either be used to preserve the fish that the Smiths sold, or possibly just sold itself as a spice.
That's so smart.
But if this was true, how did the residents get their hands on so much coconut fiber? Because we're talking Canada, not like Jamaica, right?
Well, couldn't they just go buy it at the store? Couldn't they just go down to the local like Kmart and buy it?
Well, yeah, so they logged onto their Amazon account and they ordered coconut fiber.
But I mean, like, didn't some people sell things that were kind of weird back then? Like, couldn't you go to the mainland and buy like supplies for things like that? For sure.
And this is one of those times where, the mythology of Oak Island would have you believe that coconut fiber never left, the Caribbean or I don't know, Thailand, and was completely weird and bizarre and foreign to this area. But as it turns out, coconut fiber was really a commonly used material in tons of applications at the time, from packing materials to rope production.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Andre Kostopoulos, archaeologist and anthropologist, notes that New York Harbor saw shipments of over 8 million coconuts in 1872.
That's a lot of coconuts.
Yeah.
You can call it Coke Island.
I mean, it was definitely a well-traded commodity in the 19th century.
Yeah.
So, despite evidence that Smith's Cove was a well-designed saltworks, engineer Jotham McCulley and the Truro Company believed that this beach had been redesigned as an elaborate booby trap of underground aqueducts. So their first idea was we could build a cofferdam to stop the seawater. You have any idea what a cofferdam is?
Hell no.
I learned a whole bunch of words during the process of this. So a cofferdam is essentially a huge wall that would create a barrier around the cove that would allow them to pump it dry.
Okay. That's kind of what the guys did in the modern day.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll do it again later on in modern Oak Island. Okay. Unfortunately, McCulley's attempt was destroyed in a storm. So changing strategies, they decided now the best course of action is probably to drill into the flood tunnel somewhere between the cove and the money pit and dam it. This should theoretically prevent the money pit from flooding and finally allow them to bail it out and claim the chests or whatever's down there. So they dug several holes in different spots along the space in between until they encountered a boulder and running water at 35 feet. They plugged this tunnel with a wooden stopper, essentially like putting a gigantic cork into a bottle.
That's cute.
But when they returned to the money pit and they resumed pumping out the water, it still continued to flood. And so they came to a horrified realization. There must be another flood tunnel coming from the cove. This booby trap to them was even more intricate than they realized.
What if they were just on an island surrounded by water and it's very porous?
I mean, the island is surrounded by water.
I don't know. I feel like that's a very complex theory, where I think the more simple theory is it's an island surrounded by water that is porous. It's a porous island.
So one of the interesting things is that a lot of these more complicated theories, and in fact some of the more some of the more surprising or the more mystical parts of the Oak Island myth always tend to come around the time that somebody's running out of money.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like when they discovered this stone at 90 feet down was right around the time that Simeon Linz was just about to run out of money.
Oh, wow. And you're talking about the runestone.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So Macaulay, he's trying to figure out what to do about these numerous flood tunnels that they are now convinced are running underneath the island. But around this time, the treasure hunt claimed its first victim. While attempting to drain a tunnel, one of the steam-powered pumps exploded, scalding the surrounding workers with superheated steam.
Oh, that's fucking horrible.
Most escaped with only severe burns, but one man was burned to death. We don't know his name.
Oh, shit.
But yeah. Now, by this point, Truro's investors were getting restless. Funds dried up, and Oak Island's mysterious money pit was abandoned. Macaulay rounded up what financing he could, and he returned in 1861, this time with a new company, the Oak Island Association. This is now the third company in less than 50 years, and get used to this because more and more companies are going to be formed around this process.
This is like that restaurant you always walk by that changes names like every
like
6 months.
Every 6 months it's like it's a new restaurant. It's got a completely new name, but everything's exactly the same.
Everything's the same. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the Oak Island Association plans on bailing out the money pit using these massive casks. Kind of think like wine barrels on pulleys. Okay. They succeeded in bailing out about 90 feet of the hole when disaster struck. The repeated excavation, flooding became too much for the fragile tunnel walls to handle, and the soft mud and clay finally caved in. According to Macaulay, a crash was heard in the money pit. We supposed to be the upper platform falling, and immediately the bottom of the money pit fell to about 102 feet, measuring from the level of the ground to the top. Immediately after, the cribbing of the money pit, commencing at the bottom, fell in plank after plank until there was only 30 feet of cribbing left. On Monday, the top fell in, leaving the old money pit a complete mess of ruins.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But it was clay. That's not the most secure base.
Clay and mud.
That's not good.
Yeah. What they really needed was some kind of form that would hold the structure of the tunnel that they were digging into the money pit, or the shaft they were digging into the money pit. But you don't have the technology at the time.
Yeah, that seems a little advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This will come later.
Okay.
This was perplexing to Macaulay, though, because the only way a collapse like this could have happened, because it started from the bottom, right? That would only happen if there was an empty void below the bottom of the money pit. So now he's questioning, does it go even deeper than we thought? Was there like a fragile bottom platform and another like deeper pit that we didn't know about? And what the hell are they supposed to do now that everything's lost? Anyone else would probably have thrown in the towel at this point, but Jotham Macaulay refused. Especially now, he needed to know what was down there, and why it was so valuable that it had been booby-trapped like this. Mm-hmm. And it's with his continued effort and the next generation of searchers and a bizarre connection to secret societies that we will pick up next time.
Ooh, secret societies. That sounds exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but I have a really big... I feel like there's an elephant in the room here. A little elephant in the room.
A little island-shaped elephant.
Yeah, a little island-shaped elephant. If these dudes in 1840 are having such a hard time digging down into that pit, how the fuck do they think that Captain Kidd did it?
This is one of those funny things that, I don't want to say it's a smoking gun. There's not really a smoking gun with Oak Island, but it's a question that I don't think enough of the searchers ask, especially throughout the whole process, which is, how the hell did this happen in the first place? Yeah. Because, sure, you take Captain Kidd, assuming that it's him, right? Mm-hmm. It's a pirate who's on the run. He knows that there are pirate hunters after him. He knows that the noose is ahead of him. He's got a limited amount of time. So he digs 100-foot hole with what? Right? With what? And then he builds booby-trap tunnels with what?
Yeah, with what? This is what, the 1500s?
He would have been doing that in the late 1600s.
Oh, it doesn't...
early 1700s.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, that's crazy.
Sure,
They didn't have that technology.
No, I mean, we just talked about how the original augers were only invented in the early 1800s.
Yeah.
So William Kidd and his crew were still digging with shovels.
Yeah.
John Gardenier was digging with shovels.
Yeah.
So, yes. You bring up a really good point.
I mean, even if it was... I know we're going to get into the Knights Templar.
Yes.
I mean, everybody probably knows that the Knights Templar are somehow connected to this.
Or the Freemasons, yeah.
Or the Freemasons. But even if those fuckers did this, how the hell did they do it? I mean, it just logically makes zero sense to me how they did this.
I feel like if you invoke the Freemasons or the Knights Templar, at least you have the option of bodies to throw at it. Mm-hmm. Where, you think about Captain Kidd's crew, at the most he's got access to maybe 100 people,
Yeah.
At least with the Freemasons, you could have 1,000 people on the island. Although it certainly seems like that would be recorded somehow.
I mean, yeah, there'd be all kinds of stuff dropped and the stuff that you would find everywhere, which I know that we're probably going to get into that, but...
Sure.
It just still doesn't make sense to me. It still doesn't explain it. The technology needed to go that deep is not, I don't know if it's there. I mean, right. I know we have, Paris has the catacombs, like we've got tunnels. We've got old tunnels in our history.
Yeah. I don't think the catacombs are 100 feet deep, though.
I don't know how deep they are. But I'm just saying, like, there are tunnels, like, old tunnels.
The Paris catacombs are actually 1,500 meters deep. Although,
wow.
Yeah. I'm sorry, 66 feet deep, roughly the equivalent of a 5-story building.
Oh, they're 66 feet deep.
Yeah, the Paris catacombs are 66 feet deep.
Okay.
The equivalent of a 5-story building, which is pretty impressive.
That's impressive, but they're wide, right? They're wider. They probably first dug a really big, wide pit, right? And then established the walls. 1,400
square yards.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, if anybody's listening and knows about tunnels.
Yeah, any industrial engineers
we need
out there, slaymonsterspodcast@gmail.com.
But just to my like very uneducated brain on this, it just seems very hard to believe that this happened. This could have happened.
Right, it does. And we will see as our technology advances, we still are being foiled by things like the flood tunnels. We're still being foiled by the depth that they're digging and all of this stuff. And yeah, it certainly becomes more and more a question of like, what the hell happened here, if anything. But there's something about Oak Island, and we're seeing it. We saw it with the boys, and now we're seeing it with Jotham McCulley. Now, even Simeon Lynn's a little bit. It gets stuck with people. Yeah. They get stuck on it. And he just will not be deterred. And there are some people come and go, But then there are some people that it becomes their entire life's work. And the original three, absolutely. Like, they were there forever. They were trying to get to the bottom of it forever. Simeon Lynn's exhausted a lot of his finances trying to get there. Jotham McCulley keeps coming back over and over again, believing there's got to be something down there. And you get these little encouraging pieces. You know, they found the rune stone.
Yeah.
Well, that's got to be something. McCulley, the augur brought up those links of gold. It's like, why are there links of gold embedded in oak over 100 feet below the surface? There has to be something, some reason for it.
Makes
right?
you wonder.
Yeah. And we'll talk about my theory on why those things exist and why they are so deep down there later on in the series. I'll just say later on in the series. But these are the things that keep people coming back and keep it in front of them, them excited about it. And then there's just some magic about Oak Island, dude, that it's obsessive. You know, it's this mystery that needs to be solved.
I get it. Yeah. I mean, I understand the pull very much.
Yeah.
I don't blame people for getting excited about it. I really don't.
It's in a way like one of the few mysteries that's left in the world here, you know? And I think the idea of buried treasure, pirate gold, Templar gold, you know, biblical gold, whatever it is that is down there, or they claim to be down there, just it strikes a particular nerve with us that we want that. You know, we talked about in the last episode how the pirate lifestyle was appealing, at least in theory and in mythology, to a lot of the Western world, because it was like, our lives suck, but you're telling me that there was a way that I can kind of throw off the shackles of this, you know, lower class lifestyle, enter into a democracy, decide my fate for myself, maybe even become rich along the way. I mean, that's kind of all that Oak Island is too, right? It's like, look, you could find this, it could change the course of your life forever. You don't need to be, you know, living your day-to-day mundane life anymore.
Right.
It's freedom in a way.
It is kind of freedom. It is. It's glory. It's freedom.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, so now we've had the Oak Island original three. We've had Simeon Lynn's and his company. We've had Jotham McCulley coming back. We've had, 3 or 4 different companies at this point. And we start to get into what we talked about at the beginning. There are all these people who are showing up, who are digging, who are invested in this mystery. And now people outside are looking at that and saying, what is there? You haven't found anything, but you're still obsessed with it. Why? There must be something there. That is the continuing story of Oak Island that we will keep peeling back the layers like the Oak Island onion that it is.
Yeah.
And next time, oh boy, I'm really excited to get into next time. I had considered whether or not to make it a separate, like an entirely separate section altogether, but baby, we're gonna get into some secret societies, and it's gonna be a blast.
Yay. They get into all kinds of trouble.
Oh,
secret societies.
It combines 2 of my favorite things, which is some good old-fashioned history and some crazy conspiracy.
Nice.
Yeah.
And probably some orgies. And goat sacrificing.
Is there goat sacrificing? I'm not sure there's goat sacrificing. There's definitely going to be some orgies.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So check that out next time.
Next time.
But for now, thank you so much for listening, joining us today on this, and our cats.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening and joining us today on this search for the buried Oak Island treasure.
Thank you very much. And write in if you have anything to say about it. Like to hear your thoughts.
Yes. Again, tell us about these. I mean, I'm not a structural engineer. I don't really understand what they're doing. The people who are doing these digs are not always structural engineers and don't always know what they're doing. So I don't know how much sense this makes, But if anybody has any great input for us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com.
Just be careful. Don't dig any big holes.
Make sure
They could collapse on you.
support the sides. Always support the sides. And I think just don't dig below the waterline.
I'm going to say don't dig because I don't want to encourage this. Don't do this at home. Don't do this on an island. Don't do it anywhere.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do it anywhere.
It's scary.
It's bad.
It's bad.
Yeah, don't dig below the waterline. Bad. All right.
Well, until next time.
Be safe out there.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the Paranormal History Podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways to show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.